Hello book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. Today we will be doing a very exciting video which is going through my top 10 books of 2022. So 2022 was a really great reading year for me. I read a lot of books that will probably be on my all-time favorite lists. I started experimenting a bit more with some new genres like sci-fi and thrillers, and had a great time just, getting to know my reading taste a little bit more. Now, of the 10 books that I have here, they are primarily romance. I was looking through them. I guess that is still, one of my favorite genres, but we have some really great books here that I'm excited to get through. I have 4 books here that are honorable mentions. So they're books that I really enjoy, but they just didn't quite make it onto the list. Then as far as the list goes, it's not quite in order. I just wasn't able to do it. I would say that the top 4 that I will be going through are the 4 that are competing kind of for that top spot. So I would say there's the top 4 and then there's the bottom 6. But within those groups, depending on the day, it really can kind of fluctuate where in that list they'll go. So I kind of have it a little bit random other than separating the top 4 as being probably the best books of the year. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the lists. As far as the honorable mentions, I do want to mention Blake Crouch's Dark Matter. This is a sci-fi thriller that really kind of got me into this genre. I read a couple other sci-fi thrillers this year because of this book, and will definitely be continuing to look into this specific genre. The pacing of the story was really incredible, and I felt like it was a very entertaining story that was really easy to get invested in. I really enjoyed the author's writing. While it wasn't anything gorgeous, I did feel that it worked incredibly well for this story. So definitely one of the best books that I read of the year. Just didn't quite make it into that top spot. Next, we have another sci-fi thriller, and that is The Passengers by John Mars. I do have a vlog where I talk about this book quite a bit because I felt like it had quite a few important messages, so I'll go ahead and link that and you can check it out. But overall, I thought it was a really intense story that dealt with issues of who does society deem worthy? Who is more important than someone else? And why are they more important? And I really enjoyed the discussions of that story, and really enjoyed the outcome of the story as well. We then have a romance that kind of opened my eyes to a subgenre in romance, and that is A Lady of Rook Manor by Catherine Moon. This is a reverse harem monster romance. I did read the second book in this series as well. I did like the first one a little bit better. I thought the pacing of the relationship progression was a little bit better. And this one, the story is definitely character driven. It is a very smutty romance with just enough plot to move the story forward, but I just was incredibly invested in the characters and their relationship, and so also enjoyed the author's writing and will definitely be checking out more of her work, as well as more reverse harems and more monster romances as well. The last book that is an honorable mention is We Free the Stars by Hafsa Fazal. This was probably one of the most surprising books of the year for me because I really didn't enjoy the first book. I almost didn't continue the series just because I was so disappointed by it, but luckily book 1 had a good enough ending for me to jump into book 2, and book 2 just really stepped up the game. In the first book, I did develop an attachment to the characters, and my love of those characters only grew even more in the second book, and this book was a lot more plot driven. I felt in the first book there really wasn't much happening, but this book just took off and was incredibly intense and immersive. I really enjoyed the ending of the story and the decisions that our characters made and the reasonings behind their decisions. So I think it was just overall a really great written story. So definitely glad that I did not give up on that series. All right, so now to get into the actual top 10 for the next 6 that I'll be talking about. As I mentioned, you can kind of flip-flop them, you know, based on the day. Honestly, at this point, they're just in a random order, so it's not even, you know, my favorite on this day because I just know it's gonna change. But for number 10, we have The Charm Offensive by Alison Cotran. This is a male-male romance that has a lot of diversity rep in a lot of different areas. We have a lot of diversity rep in racial aspects, in queer aspects or sexuality aspects, as well as sorry about that. I don't know if you could hear that. Um, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, as well as when it came to mental health issues that people were having. So we follow 2 characters. I should probably refresh their names. We have Dev and Charlie. So Dev works as a producer for a reality TV show that's kind of like The Bachelor, and Charlie is selected to be that season's bachelor. Now he has no experience with acting, reality TV shows, or anything like that. He is trying to clean up his image after he lost his company due to a mental health crisis that he had. We continue to see him struggle with his mental health, specifically OCD and anxiety throughout this book, and we also see Dev struggle with his depression. I thought that their depictions of the mental health were very realistic based off of what little I know of those mental health issues. I personally do have anxiety, though not super severe, but I do not have OCD or depression. So of course I can't say as an own voice reader or anything how good it was, but based off other books that I've read, just research that I've done, it seems like the author did a very good job with this story. It was also incredibly sweet, their romance, watching it bloom from co-workers to friends that are incredibly supportive of each other to lovers. So I really enjoyed the messages in the story, as well as the romance and all the side characters, as well as the setting. It was just a very interesting story, and just led to it being a wonderful 5-star read. All right, at number 9, we have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This was, I think, a book I read in January, maybe my 3rd or so book. It was very early in the year that I actually forgot that I read it this year. I thought I read it in the previous year, but here it is, and it's at the top of my list because I absolutely loved this story. We are following Olive and Adam, and it has a academic setting. He is a professor and she is a grad student. She's not his grad student, so there's no sort of weird power dynamic there or anything, but it does have a fake dating trope. It's also what you would consider kind of like grumpy sunshine. This is also one of the first books I ever read that had demisexual rep in it, and it just was really wonderful for me to read a character that had similar views on like sexual relationships that I have. So that was one of the reasons that I really enjoyed reading this story. The other part is Ali Hazelwood just has a very entertaining, sweet and funny writing style. Following her characters is just such a heartwarming experience. She also addresses the issue of the discrimination that women in STEM face when it comes to getting credit for their work, being respected, as well as being looked down at, and even kind of sexually assaulted and harassed by their male colleagues. So I'm very glad that she addresses those issues in these books, but also balances out those heavier topics with such a sweet romance that you just find yourself rooting for the entire time. All right, and book number 8 is another contemporary romance. Apparently, I had relatively good luck with contemporary, though once I get to my least favorites, you'll also see that I had some issues with it as well. But number 8 is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I have given this author 5 stars for every book that I read. The Beach Reads, that's the one, was one of my top books last year in 2021. I did also read Friends on Vacation. Oh, People We Meet on Vacation, that's what it's called. And gave that 5 stars as well. But I did enjoy this book more, so I went ahead and put this one on my list. In this book, we follow 2 characters that work in the publishing industry, and they kind of meet up unexpectedly in this small town. Our main character, her sister, brought her to this small town because she wanted that small town experience where, you go to the small town and you meet a small town boy or something, because her sister just hasn't had the most luck with romance, because she's usually the snobby workaholic woman that gets left behind when the man finds a small town girl. So in this case, she does meet up with, what's his name? Charlie, another Charlie. And he is at that location. I don't remember if it's spoilery, so I'm just gonna say he's in town for some reason. And they don't get along very well. They've met in the past and tried to work together on projects, and it just didn't work out. So this is a bit of enemies to lovers. I wouldn't say that the enemies portion of it lasts very long, but one of the things I really enjoy about Emily Henry's books is that while the romance aspect is very addictive and you really want to see the characters together and enjoy their interactions, there is a lot going on around the characters, and it's not just an hyper focused on the romance aspect of it, which in certain romances like Emily Henry's I really enjoy. In this case, we focus a lot on her relationship with her sister, which has been a little bit strained over the last few months or years. She very much considers herself her sister's caretaker after their mother had passed away, but her sister seems to be pulling away, and so we're kind of working through as she's trying to figure out what's going on with her sister and how she can mend that relationship. We also have some things with Charlie as he's dealing with family expectations while trying to be the best man that he can be. And so I really enjoyed all those aspects of it. As always, I really enjoy Emily Henry's writing. I think it has a good balance of humor and serious moments. I feel that the tension between the characters is really intense and sexy, and you really want the two of them to just fall together. It is a little bit of a slow burn as well, which I enjoy, and honestly, I'm just gonna keep reading all of her books and hopefully giving them all 5 stars, as I have been. And for book number 7, we have something that isn't a contemporary romance, it's a fantasy romance, and that is Radiance by Grace Drabin. This is a fantasy romance between a human woman and a man that is part of the Kai, which are somewhat humanoid beings, but they have gray skin and black eyes and sharp teeth and claws and some slight magical abilities, though by each generation those magical abilities seem to be fading. So in this world, there are 3 kingdoms. We have 2 human kingdoms and the Kai kingdom, and one of the human kingdoms is wanting to attack the other human kingdom for access to their ports. So she is the niece of the king of the human kingdom that owns the ports at this time and wants to prevent being attacked. And he is the second prince of the Kai. And his brother has produced like 6 children, so he's never going to see the throne. So they're considered unimportant, but important enough where the two kingdoms decide to make an alliance by having the two of them marry. So human and Kai have never really married in the past because they find each other very repulsive. They're like ugly, Kai think the humans are ugly and the humans think the Kai are ugly. And of course, when these two meet, they're like, um, but personality wise they connect pretty much instantly, and so they're very happy with this arrangement, and she goes with him to his homestead in the Kai territory, and we just watch them develop a friendship and that eventually become more. So this is one of the sweetest romances that I've read, and they're probably one of my favorite couples that I've ever read. I just thought that the development of their relationship was pretty much perfect. Like, this is the way I would love to see pretty much any relationship develop in any book. I thought that the pacing that the relationship was developed was really well done and very realistic. Another thing I liked about the story is that it had enough plot in order for me to be interested. The second book I also read had more plot that was even more interesting. So while this is a wonderful first book, the rest of the series continues to be incredibly strong as well. So this is definitely an author that I'm going to continue reading. And I would say that this book definitely wins the award for the best couple of the year. All right, the next 2 books I'm going to talk about, I don't own physical copies of, so I'm just going to step over here real quick. So for book number 6, we have Wildcard by Marie Lu. This is a second book in a duology. The first one is called Warcross, and this is a YA kind of dystopian video game based story similar to Ready Player One. In this story, we follow a young woman, I think she's 18, 19 years old, who is struggling financially and has been since the death of her father. She acts as a bounty hunter for people that gamble illegally within a game called Warcross. Warcross is like a virtual reality game where you can put on your visor and then you feel like you're actually within that world, and within this world there are often competitions held, and she hunts down the people that illegally bet on those games. One day, one of the biggest competitions of the year is being held, and she sees a rare item in the game that she wants to steal in hopes that she can sell it and get herself out of her financially precarious situation. But in doing so, she accidentally glitches into the actual competition, and the competition has to be stopped. The creator of the game ends up bringing her to Japan because he figured if she's so good at getting into the game, she can help him find a person called Zero who has been causing issues with their code, and he's worried that this hacker is going to do something dramatic and dangerous during the next big competition. While book 1 was a 5-star read for me, I really think things took off in book 2. We got a bit more teamwork than in the first book. In the first book, she works alone a lot more, but I really do enjoy a teamwork aspect to stories. So I really liked that part of the story. I also liked the way that the relationship with her and the creator developed in the second book. We also introduced some new interesting characters that I really enjoyed, and the ending was honestly like chef's kiss. I absolutely loved the pacing of the story, of the direction that the story took, of all the plot twists, because there's a lot of them. There was quite a few, and I was very shocked for many aspects of the story. So it was just a very incredibly It was an incredibly fun read. I listened to the audiobooks and I highly suggest, if you haven't checked out the series, I know it is a little older, I think it really holds up, that you should definitely check it out. And then for book number 5, we have another book where the audiobook just enhanced the experience so much that I highly suggest, if you're able to listen to it, that you do so, and that is World War Z by Max Brooks. So this is a story about a man who, after the zombie apocalypse occurred, had written a story, I believe on the behest of the government. And at the beginning of the story, the government's like, that's great, but we need more the scientific part, the data portions. You have a lot of personal stories that we don't need, so we suggest you go ahead and just turn that into something else. And this book is that something else, where he is interviewing a lot of different people all over the world who survived the zombie apocalypse and what their experience of it was. So this audiobook is a full cast, so every character is spoken by or narrated by somebody else, and the stories are so incredible. We have really people of all different aspects of life. We have scientists, we have military, we have civilians, we have criminals, any person that you can think of, you know, to some degree, they have told this man their story. And this story just brought out so many different emotions. You know, it made me laugh, it made me scared, I was very invested, I was crying. I mean, it was just such an interesting experience. I never felt that way while reading an audiobook before. I felt almost like watching a movie. Like I could really visualize everything that was happening, the characters, they were all so individual, and it just made the story incredibly interesting, and you never got bored or anything along those lines. We were always just seeing all aspects of the zombie war and all the different ways that it impacted different parts of the world and different people in the world. I know that there is a movie out called World War Z. It is nothing like the book. In fact, I think it's a disgrace that that movie could even have the same title. So I highly suggest that you check out this book, specifically the audiobook. It is an incredible listening experience. It is definitely an audiobook that I'm going to listen to probably multiple times throughout my life. All right, guys, now we are getting into the top 4. So the next 4 books I'm talking about, you can assume that on any given day, I would tell you that this is the best book that I read in 2022. All of these books are books that if you haven't picked them up, I highly suggest you do so this year so that you can enjoy the incredible experience that is reading them. So the first one is a third book of a trilogy, so it's a completion of a series, and that is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. I am so happy that I read this series this year. It's definitely an intimidating series, and I honestly probably wouldn't have gotten to it if it wasn't for Mel Reads, who hosted a read-along for these books. In this book, we are following a family of Jade users. So they are what we would consider like a mob family, and they live on the island of Kekon, I believe is what it's called. And it is a small island based on East Asian culture, and this whole story is like an East Asian urban fantasy. And they are in control of the use of Jade because their people are able to use it. There's only certain people that can enhance their abilities through Jade. This is usually things like fighting, strength, jumping, ability to dodge bullets, and as well as healing. And they are in competition with another gang on this island called the Mountain Clan, who is also trying to control the amount of jade in the town. And throughout this story, we watch not just these two clans as they battle for control of different areas of the island, but also as outside forces come in and are thoroughly invested in the use of jade in their own military. So this is a highly political series where there is a lot of world building going on. There's quite a few characters that we are following. This whole story spans at least 20 years. So you get very immersed in these characters' lives and the decisions that they make. We don't just see the short-term impacts, but also the long-term impacts of those decisions. The author's ability to write long-term characters and to write war not only on the battlefield, but within the political field and the corporate field is so impressive. The characters are very dynamic. You don't really have any characters that you thoroughly love. Like there's a part of you that is always like, I don't really like you, but when bad things happen to them, which in this book very much happens many times, your heart will be utterly ripped out of your chest. I was destroyed by this book in a way that I had not been destroyed since I read Song of Achilles. It was a very heart-wrenching story watching this year-long battle come to its end. This book spans a longer time period than any of the other books. We see all the characters' decisions kind of come to fruition. We see the repercussions of past mistakes. We see the repercussions of their character flaws. And honestly, this book just left me a little bit speechless when I finished it. I feel like when people are reaching the climax of a series, when they're reaching the end of a series, that this is what they are looking for. This is honestly what every author should aim to achieve in the final book of a series. So 5 out of 5. The first 2 books were excellent as well. I think I gave them either 4.5 stars, but it was definitely the last book that took the cake. All right, and then for number 3, this is the last romance book. The other books do have, kind of romance subplots, but this is the last one where the main genre of the story is romance, and that is 7 Days in June by Talia Williams. This is a book that I read after reading a few contemporary romances that you'll probably see in my least favorite books of the year, and it kind of restored my faith in contemporary romance. This is so much more than just a romance between two people. We are following Ava and Shane, and they met when they were in high school, I believe, and had 7 days together before Ava woke up one day and Shane was gone. It is now many, many years later, and they are both authors, and they meet at a convention and kind of reconnect after that because Shane wants to be part of Ava's life again, but she is a little bit reluctant about it based off the fact that he just up and left her one day many years ago. Ava is a single mother of a wonderful daughter. She is also suffering from severe migraines, so she does have a chronic illness that does negatively impact her life, but it was really wonderful to kind of see her overcome that and continue to reach for her goals and just strive to be the best author that she could be despite her chronic illness, sometimes causing her to just have to go at a slightly slower pace. Shane also has some issues. He is a recovering alcoholic, I believe, and may have had some issues with other substances in the past. Ava also did self-harm when she was younger, so there are a few trigger warnings for the story because they both had incredibly hard childhoods. In the story, we don't just go through their relationship as they kind of relearn each other and re-fall in love. We also see Ava with her daughter. We also see her with her relationship to her, to the stories that she's created and the stories that she wants to create. Kind of seeing her grow as an author as she decides to kind of push out of her comfort zone. She's been very successful with paranormal romance, but she wants to push into something that's more like literary fiction, something that's deeper and rawer and more personal. And that's very difficult for her. And it was very wonderful to see her go through that journey. We also see her relationship with her mother, which wasn't the healthiest relationship. Her mother was not someone that could be very well relied on. She wasn't much of a mother figure. She was very selfish in that aspect. So we see her as she tries to be a mother herself while rebuilding a relationship with her mother that she loves very dearly, but also blames for a lot of the issues that she had in her childhood. So this was overall just a very moving story, very emotional. The writing was absolutely stunning. I'm so glad that I own a physical copy of it so I can hopefully reread it at some point and just, tab the crap out of it. 10 out of 10. Recommend this story. It was just it was heartbreaking yet also heartwarming and just had everything that I could ever want in a contemporary romance. All right, and for book number 2, we have one of the first books that I read this year. I believe it's the second book that I read this year, and that is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I did read her other book, Uprooted, this month, and really enjoyed it as well. She's definitely a wonderful author, but this book was my favorite. And in this story, we follow 3 different characters. They are young women. We follow, I unfortunately don't know any of their names. I think they're semi-Russian or Polish or something. But we follow the daughter of a moneylender, and he's pretty terrible at his job because he's too soft-hearted and does not collect on the dues. So when her mother, I believe, becomes ill, or maybe her father becomes ill, our character says, enough is enough, I'm going out and I'm going to collect that money. And so she kind of takes over her father's job and does such a good job at it that they say that she could turn silver into gold. And this attracts the attention of the Stark. The Stark are these beings that live out in the cold mountains. One day their king comes and forces her to marry him so that she can turn their silver into gold. And they need gold for some reason. I'm not going to say why, but she has been forced into this situation and is not happy about it. We follow another character who is the daughter of a poor drunk. She has 2 brothers, and they're all kind of mourning the death of their mother. And one day when our money broker's daughter shows up and says, hey, drunk man, you owe us money. He says, I don't have it. So she says, your daughter can come work for us. And she really likes this setup because she really enjoys the work and the way that the family treats her, and is hoping to find a way to save some money that she is receiving that doesn't have to go toward the debt, to help her and her brothers escape their father. The third character is a wealthy woman who is to marry the Tsar, I believe is who she's to marry. And it seems that he is actually possessed by some sort of fire demon. So she has to kind of survive that whole situation. So we have 3 women that are not in the best of situations, but they are all incredibly strong and intelligent, and they are hardworking. These are women that really stand up for themselves, and they don't take any crap, and they are the kind of people who just get shit done. They're like, there's a problem, I'm gonna solve it. And throughout this book, we kind of see as they are the ones that are moving the story forward. They're the ones that are making things better. They're the ones that are solving the problems, overcoming the obstacles. They're the ones that are, helping people rise up. And the men in the story who saw very little in these women in the beginning start to see their value more and more and start to work to improve themselves to be worthy of these women that they previously thought beneath them. So that's an aspect of the story I really enjoyed. Just seeing these men as they are like doing some groveling. They're like, hey, sorry I treated you like crap, but I see that you're such a wonderful person now. But another aspect of the story that really brought it to life is just the writing of it. Naomi Novik has a writing that is really perfect for these kind of fairy tale-esque stories, and it just made everything really beautiful and magical and made things very cold and eerie when it needed to be, but also very warm and cozy when the time was right. So I thought that the writing and just the message and the strong female leads in the story were just top tier. All right, guys, and we have made it to the top book of the year as of today. Like I said, it could switch at any moment. But if you watched my recent book haul, you may have an idea of what book that is. And it is The Iron Widow by Sharon J. Shao. This is I keep wondering if it's YA or adult. I think it might lean slightly towards YA, but it is a sci-fi story based on ancient China. It's kind of similar to Pacific Rim, the movie with the robots. We follow a character whose sister was sent off to the front line to power what is called a chrysalis. And a chrysalis is a robot that's made from alien technology that is powered by its users. And usually there's a man and a woman in the cockpit, and in most cases, the woman's life force or her chi is completely drained during the process. So many women have died during this war by having their chi completely drained from them for the benefit of the male pilots. And after this occurs to her sister, she decides to volunteer to be a pilot for specifically the pilot that is responsible for the death of her sister, and ends up becoming what is known as an Iron Widow, meaning that she has the ability to drain the chi from the male pilots, ending with them dying instead of her. Because of this, they end up pairing her with one of the strongest males on the forces, because they obviously want the women to be dying and not the men, but they end up being incredibly compatible and balanced so that they're able to run the machine together instead of one or the other killing them. We also have a third character who is an old friend of our main character. He is someone that was teaching her because he's part of a wealthy family and she comes from, a rural area, and the two of them met one day and he decides to follow her to the front lines so that he can support her, because she's got a lot of enemies there because she's a woman who was incredibly strong. And the three of them actually are able to power this machine together even better than two people. So this book does have a polyamorous relationship in it, which was really wonderful to see. I really enjoyed the messages of this story about the way societies train women to think that their life is not valued as much unless they're sacrificing themselves for something that they work very hard to make women feel like they are weak and dependent on men. This book does have disability rep because our main character is a victim of foot binding. I really enjoyed the scenes with the robot fighting, and I thought that the action scenes was well balanced out with all the political maneuvering that our characters were doing as they used their position of power, because right now they're an incredibly powerful robot that is winning them a lot of battles and protecting the kingdom, and they're using that position to kind of twist the arm of those in power in hopes of bringing about change. But what really sealed this book as one of the top books of the year is the ending. The ending was something that I was kind of wondering if the author was going to go in that direction. And when they did, it was incredibly surprising and had a huge impact, or was very impactful. It definitely made me want to jump right into book 2. So I definitely think that this is a excellent book to read if you're someone who likes an ending that's a little bit unexpected, which may be weird for me to say because I was like saying, hey, I was expecting that ending. But at the same time, I wasn't expecting it to actually happen because I feel like I've never read that in a book before. But yeah, so overall, just a really great story. Really enjoyed our character. She was just the kind of character that didn't really care what people thought about her. She's like, you know what, if you want me to be the bad guy, I'm gonna be the bad guy, but if it makes things better for the next generation of women, I'm willing to make that sacrifice. So she's a character I definitely highly respect, and I look forward to seeing what she does in book 2, because the ending of this book definitely had her and me reeling. All right, guys, so those are my top 10 books of the year, as well as a few honorable mentions. Let me know down below what some of your favorite books of the year were. Thank you, as always, for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!